Welcome to SVG-TV News for Wednesday, March 8, 2017. I am Rochelle Batiste with the details. Leader of the opposition New Democratic Party, Dr. Godwin Friday, has described the ruling on the election petitions by the Court of Appeal in St. Lucia on Tuesday as a wonderful victory. Calling in from St. Lucia on Nice Radio last evening, Dr. Friday said the judgment handed down by the Court of Appeal is not only a victory for NDP supporters, but is for every Vincentian. He said that the ruling, which also awarded them costs, also vindicates their struggle for democracy and fair play.
That decision was tainted by bias, and that the two petitions have been reinstated so they can proceed on their merits, and that the petitioners can proceed and go forward, and that it should be done expeditiously. They also provided awarded costs to the petitioners at the trial division that is in the application that was before the motions that were before Justice Butler and here at the Court of Appeal. And moreover, what's more important is that the Court of Appeal has vindicated the position of Batiste and Exeter, and of course all the hopes and dreams of the people who support their application, the supporters of the Democratic Party, but more importantly, the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines who are looking forward to justice and democracy in their country.
Praising the work done by their legal team, whom he described as champions of justice, Dr. Friday said he is pleased that the petitions have been brought back into the court of law and are alive again.
The petitions are now alive again, and they can proceed on their merits to adjudication. So the lawyers who are advising our petitioners, we are standing behind them 100%. We are so grateful to them, led by Senior Counsel, Queen's Counsel Stanley John and K. Bacchus Batiste. We have also the Counsel from Trinidad, Mr. Keith Scotland, and we also had Maya Eustace today and Zinger Horn Edwards. And we are so grateful to them for sticking with it and for going forward, fees or no fees. They have been there, and they have been champions of democracy for the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I'm happy today that we have been vindicated in the Court of Appeal, and now we can proceed to have these cases heard on the merits.
The opposition leader said he is also satisfied that the court emphasized the need for the case to proceed with haste and assured the public that the NDP will also proceed with the matter vigorously.
I was sitting in the court today, and they said that petitions, election petitions, must be dealt with expeditiously.
Standard.
One of the things that they said is that this matter will go forward, and it will go forward expeditiously. So our lawyers are going to move as quickly as possible to prepare for the trial of the matter, and this means that whatever is required to prepare for the trial, they're going to make the necessary applications to the court, and we are going to proceed as quickly as possible so that it can be finally resolved for the people of this country. And we are quite confident, as we were today in the Court of Appeal, that when the matter is heard on the merits, that it will reveal that the elections in Central Leeward and in North Windward were fraudulent, and that the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines deserve to have free and fair elections in this country. And that when that is revealed, that of course we must have elections at least in those two constituencies. But my position is that it taints the entire election of 2015, and the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines must proceed to have free and fair elections in this country as soon as possible.
And Prime Minister Dr. Oz Gonzales is claiming that the opposition New Democratic Party, the NDP, is misleading people on the ruling by the Court of Appeal on the election petitions. Dr. Gonzales, who was on Star Radio last evening, said that the court ruling is not a victory as the NDP would want to believe.
How that becomes translated into a victory resulting in an NDP government. I mean, I really don't understand. How you could mislead people like that? All what happens is that our candidate, our representatives, Montgomery Daniel and Sir Louis Straker, Supervisor of Elections and the Honorable Attorney General, that they will present their case as to why these petitions should be struck out. And I fully expect that what Justice Cottle did will happen again. Because the law doesn't change.
It doesn't.
The law doesn't change.
Not that quickly.
No, the law doesn't change like that. That's, and these two judgments were well argued judgments.
Yes.
And that's it.
The Prime Minister said that the focus should not be about whether Justice Brian Cottle, who threw out the petitions in 2016, was biased in his deliberation, and expressed hope that the case will be carried out with speed and efficiency.
Now, whether the Court of Appeal is right to say there was an appearance of bias is not for us an issue to debate now.
Yes.
Whether the court is right or wrong, we accept it and we proceed back to argue the case from the beginning in relation to the application to strike out the petitions, which it is properly contended and not really lawfully before the court because of the failure in respect of the security for costs.
Yes.
Depends on a whole set of things. When are all the lawyers available, when is the court available, and so on. I'm hoping that it would be treated with some expedition.
The leader of this country insinuated that if irregularities are proven in the court of law, he just might call a full general election instead of a by-election in the two constituencies where the NDP is claiming foul.
The only person in the land who would be able to advise the Governor General as to when fresh elections are to be called is the man who talking now. His name is Prime Minister Oz Gonzales. Let me just emphasize that again.
Yes.
And as I always told people from the very beginning, when the NDP filed their two petitions, as you filed two petitions, let us assume that you were to win them. What's going to happen to North Leeward, South Leeward, and East Kingston, which are just barely hold on by the skin of your teeth? You think I will only go for two by-election? Eh?
Let's go for the whole cow.
No, I'm just asking them. I'm not telling them what I will do. I'm just asking them if they think so. I'm not telling them what I will do. I'm not telegraphing.
Expressing disappointment with the Court of Appeal ruling, Senior Counsel for the Respondents, Anthony Astafan, said on Tuesday's radio program on Star FM that he and the rest of their legal team remain unresolved. Astafan said that they will, however, take a more frontal approach to the next round of court hearings.
What has concerned me, and what is something that we're going to have to confront frontally at the next hearing of the court, is what I think is the misrepresentation of what the Ezekiel Joseph case said and did. But that's for another time, comrade. I just wanted to call and indicate to you that on air that we tried. We are disappointed with the result, but we remain unresolved. And I understand that what we have to do now, we have to take a frontal approach to the matter and take it to the court and let the court make the decision, because you're quite right. This was a legal argument. This was not a question of making findings of fact. And it would be extraordinary indeed if a different judge comes to a different conclusion to what Cottle came to twice, because the law declared, and I should indicate, without seeking to judge the issues in the court, there were concessions made during the hearing that are going to loom large at any trial or any hearing of the motions to strike.
In other news, St. Vincent and the Grenadines joins the rest of the world today in celebrating International Women's Day. The theme chosen by the Gender Affairs Division in the Ministry of National Mobilization is Be Bold for a Change. In an address to commemorate the occasion, Minister with responsibility for Gender Affairs, Frederick Stevenson, congratulated all the women of the nation for their work. Minister Stevenson said while there is much to celebrate, reflection must be given to the plight and condition of the many women and girls who suffer domestic abuse, the women and girls living with disabilities, the poor, the orphaned and widows. He said as a nation, all that is necessary will be done to protect the vulnerable. He said the recently passed Domestic Violence Act is now in force and that the Family Affairs Division will continue to educate the public on the act, and to this end, more community outreach programs will continue throughout the country involving schools and community groups. The government minister appeals to men to join the march and rally in support of the women of the nation and continue to work together to ensure gender equality and equity for all. And President of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Wayne Hull, is showing support for the involvement of women in the business sector. Speaking with SVG-TV News today, Hull, who is also the country manager of telecommunication company Flow, a company that is widely populated with female employees in influential positions, stated that it is significant that recognition is given to the contribution of women here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
I think for us, it's important that the Chamber be known for recognizing the number of women who have made contribution to the development of St. Vincent, and more importantly, developing our commercial sector across many industries. We have a few members who most notably has done a lot of work in the supermarket industry. So we can recognize people like Mrs. Leela Graves or Sika Graves Group. We have from Singer Vera, persons like Mrs. Ruby Vera. We have Mrs. Monica Ross in that industry. We have in the Bonnie D. Strain, Miss Eugene Vera, and these people are stalwarts and I think business owners in that space.
Appealing for the further empowerment of women here, Hull said it is important the culture is ingrained at all levels.
Ensure that the culture of equality is ingrained in the business, or whether it's an organization or institution such as the government. Women has demonstrated over the years that they're just equally as capable of doing any job that a man can do, for instance. And in my own business, or the business that I run, I think that is something that we have ingrained. We have women in leadership position locally across the region, even in the engineering field, in the ICT field, we have women. So I think once you ingrain that culture within your business and ensure that the policies are clear, that it's equality across the board, then that would encourage women to take up and make sure that the sky is the limit in anywhere that they operate.
The Chamber of Industry and Commerce president added that while women have proven their capability of achieving great things, he would like to see more women becoming business owners.
I think they've made that mark, but yes, there are some probably what they call glass ceiling that they have not yet shattered. So, for example, we have not had our first female prime ministers yet, right? But I think you're seeing young people gravitating to those. To that field, and the structures are already in place to ensure that happens, right? So we have already had the foundation. We just wanna encourage more women to get involved in business, get involved in becoming more entrepreneurship, becoming creative, and and also if you need assistance of the chamber, we are here to help. We're here to support and help businesses to develop and expand as well, especially startups. I think the chamber has a program now where we are sort of bringing startups under our wings and try to guide and help them develop and ensure that they remain sustainable, right? Because that's very important if you are to remain in business, that you remain sustainable and you have the right structures in place.
When men do not understand their value in the community, they destroy it. That's the view of Superintendent of the Kingston Circuit of the Methodist Church, Reverend Adolph Davis, in his address at the launch of the St. Vincent Grammar School 2017 Young Leaders Program, pointing out that young men need to understand that they play a key role in sustaining and developing the country. Reverend Davis urged the students to thrive to be responsible individuals.
So many families are struggling. Why? Because the man doesn't understand that he's key in the community. Family is a key unit in our community. And those families where men are absent are disadvantaged and have to struggle to really get on top of things. Some of you grew up with your mom alone, and you know that even though your mom may have done fairly well, you know how much harder it was for her because she was alone. You have to begin to understand as a young man growing up to be a man that you are a critical ingredient in family and in community. Now that's very important for you to be thinking that way from now. Because if you don't, you will fall into the same trap of many of our men in our society who believe that they're a waste of time without even realizing that's what they believe. That all they have to do is make a sperm donation and they're good.
The Reverend further advised young men to think critically of who they are, as this will aid in how they make a difference in the overall society.
Ingredient in family and in community. Now that's very important for you to be thinking that way from now. Because if you don't, you will fall into the same trap of many of our men in our society who believe that they're a waste of time without even realizing that's what they believe. If you don't pull your weight, families will be destroyed, messed up. Other young men like yourself will be put at a disadvantage. Other young men like yourself will be exposed in ways they should not be because daddy wasn't there. You have to begin to think from now and understand who you are as a young man. When God says to Adam, we, you are critical in this we. God was saying he wants us as males to understand this community, this society, this world needs us.
Celebrating our indigenous history, heritage and culture from mainland to island and return, strengthening links, forging networks, claiming an ancestral space. That's the theme under which the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, the TGHF, is hosting a series of events as part of the 2017 International Garifuna Summit, held in collaboration with the University of the West Indies Open Campus. Seen as a complementary facet of the summit, last evening the foundation officially opened the 4th International Garifuna Conference at the Methodist Church Hall, which ended here earlier today, Wednesday, March 8th. The opening ceremony features speeches from major stakeholders as well as a keynote address by renowned historian Dr. Lennox Honeychurch. Nikita Tony has more in this report.
To create an awareness among the Vincentian public for the history, heritage, and the culture of the Garifuna people, the Garifuna Heritage Foundation, TGHF, has over the years held a series of events during the month of March, National Heritage Month, to promote the retention and revival of the culture here in SVG. One of such events is the very successful International Garifuna Conference, which was slated to take place today, Wednesday, March 8th, with an official opening ceremony held on Tuesday evening, March 7, 2017 at the Methodist Church Hall. Deeming the Garifuna culture to be an essential part of the Vincentian history and heritage, President of TGHF David Darky Williams said for too long persons have had to look to the diaspora to gain knowledge of the Garifuna people. He noted that this speaks to the creation of the conference and more so the International Garifuna Summit on a whole, as persons can now seek information and learn more about their heritage right here in SVG.
Our history taught us about Black Caribs. Garifuna, Black Caribs, same thing. And I invite you to encourage your friends and everyone you know to try to embrace this history, this heritage, and use it to propel ourselves forward in whatever way we can.
Minister of Culture Cecil Sesmaki commended TGHF along with the University of the West Indies Open Campus for their efforts in reviving an important aspect of the Vincentian culture, noting that the ministry will also do its part to keep the Vincentian history, culture and heritage at the forefront.
Keeping these issues, the story of Chief Chatoyer, of the Garifuna people, to the forefront of Vincentians will allow us eventually to see it as the norm, accept it as the true history or background and where we have come from, and therefore draw on the strengths of where we must go.
Congratulating the International Garifuna Conference Committee for their hard work in bringing the event to life, head of the UWI Open Campus, Deborah Dalrymple, outlined that her institution remains proud to be a part of the initiative, which will go a long way in developing the people and building the nation.
People who reflect the admixture of African and the Kalinago people into one people, the Garifuna or Garinago. I do believe that knowledge of the resistance and the survival and resilience of the Garinago ought to influence the worldview of Vincentians and help us to take pride in being Vincentian and better claim our cultural identity as a people. But perhaps the story of Yorome still needs to be told.
While giving a brief overview of the conference, a chairperson of the conference committee, Vanessa Demersion, pointed out that persons can expect to hear presentations on the history and perspectives of the indigenous experience, as well as be a part of discussions on the way forward.
Educating on local history and the indigenous people's contribution remains a priority, mostly among teachers who will then be able to pass on to the future generations. We'll be having a workshop session during which we will create an interactive working time that will allow new perspectives for the future vision of the past.
Presenting on respect for indigenous knowledge, keynote speaker Dr. Lennox Honeychurch praised the work of organizations such as TGHF for their efforts in putting together the puzzle for the rediscovering and respecting of the indigenous culture.
And as the world gets more and more desperate for its resources and its rainfall and its water, it's important for us to think again about the way we live on this land and think again about the Garifuna, the Kalinago, and the respect that they had for the islands on which we live. And so we are now going, I hope, inspired by the Garifuna Foundation and all they are working for, towards a new rediscovery and a respect for indigenous knowledge and indigenous natural life.
The Garifuna Heritage Foundation invites all Vincentians to participate in the remaining exciting learning events of the summit, which is set to culminate on March 14th, National Heroes Day. Nikita Tony reporting for SVG-TV News.
Until the lions have their historians, tales of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. This African proverb was used by Dr. Adrian Fraser as he gave his presentation at the opening of this year's Garifuna Conference today at the Peace Memorial Hall. Speaking on the topic From Villain to National Hero, revising the story of Joseph Chatoyer, Dr. Fraser acknowledged that much of the historical writings on the Garifuna peoples were penned by the British colonial powers, who considered the natives as an obstacle to progress. He, however, noted that even in writing which describes Chatoyer as a savage, one can still get a picture of the life and struggles of this nation's national hero.
What is at stake here is best summed up by one of my favorite African proverbs. Until the lions have their historians, tales of hunting will always glorify the hunters. Until the lions have their historians, tales of hunting will always glorify the hunters. This, of course, captures what I'm talking about, for it is the conqueror in this case, the conquerors who have been telling the story of Chatoyer and the Caribs. One has to do some serious detective work among the writings of the Europeans. And it is easy to see that when they refer to Chatoyer as warlike and aggressive, they were actually describing a man who was trying to defend his country by any means necessary. So even looking among what they have written, it is possible to arrive at a picture of a man quite different from the one they left for us.